It is July, and your hydrangea is putting on a show that scares you. By 2 in the afternoon, the whole plant is collapsing. Every leaf drooping, the big blooms hanging their heads, the entire shrub looking like it is dying right there in front of you in the heat. So you do the most natural, caring thing in the world. You run for the hose. And that single act of kindness can be exactly what kills it. Here is what almost nobody tells you. July is the most stressful month of the entire year for a hydrangea. This is the peak of the heat, the peak of the drought, the peak of that dramatic afternoon wilting. And it is the month when the wrong reaction to a struggling plant does more damage than the heat ever could. So this is not a video about a plant that is thriving. This is about a plant that is under real stress, and about the handful of well-meaning mistakes that turn that stress into a dead shrub. There are 5 of them. And the third one is the one that actually kills the plant, because it is the one you commit while you are trying hardest to save it. You see the wilt, you read it as thirst, and you drown the plant that was never thirsty in the first place. That is mistake number 3. And there is a specific, cruel reason it works. By the end of this video, you are going to know exactly how to get your hydrangea through July alive and blooming. Exactly why each of these mistakes does its damage on a biological level, and exactly what to do instead. With the amounts, the timing, and the tests spelled right out. Not vague advice. The actual plan that decides whether your hydrangea survives the summer or collapses in the heat. But before any of it, you have to learn one simple test, because it is the single skill that separates a hydrangea you save from a hydrangea you accidentally kill. And it takes about 10 seconds. Let me show you what it is. Here is the one test that changes everything in July. And it is so simple, you will use it for the rest of your life. It is the afternoon wilt test. When your hydrangea wilts in the heat of the day, you do not water it. You wait. You look at it again in the cool of the evening, and you check it once more the next morning. The plant will tell you exactly what it needs. Here is how to read it. If your hydrangea is wilted at 2 in the afternoon, but it perks back up on its own by evening, and it looks fine again the next morning, then nothing is wrong. That is not thirst. That is a healthy plant protecting itself from the heat, and the soil has plenty of moisture. Do not water it. But if that hydrangea stays wilted into the evening, or it is still drooping the next morning when everything is cool, then, and only then, the plant actually needs water. Every reputable extension service repeats this exact test because it is the difference between saving your plant and killing it. Wilts by day, recovers by night, leave it alone. Stays wilted when it is cool, water it. 10 seconds, and you know. Now, there is one more thing you need to know before we start, because it decides one of the biggest mistakes on this list. What type of hydrangea do you have? The classic big leaf mop heads and the oak leaf types bloom on old wood, and that completely changes when you are allowed to prune. The cone-flowered panicles and the smooth types, like Annabelle, bloom on new wood. Hold on to that, because in mistake number 4, it is everything. So, do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me your state, your zone, and which type you are growing. Because your climate and your type decide which of these 5 is coming for you hardest. Now, let's start with what the July sun is doing to your plant. Mistake number 1. Leaving your hydrangea exposed to the full force of the July sun and heat with no protection. You walk out and the leaf edges have gone brown, dry, and crispy, like paper. The blooms, instead of that lush blue or pink, have developed brittle, tan, burnt edges. That is scorch. The plant is literally getting sunburned and heat burned. Here is the biology. Hydrangeas, especially the big leaf types, have big, thin leaves and a shallow, fibrous root system. On a brutally hot day, those big leaves lose water to the air faster than the shallow roots can pull it up from the soil. And wherever the water cannot reach in time, that tissue simply dries out and dies. That is the brown, crispy edge you are seeing. Oregon State documented this vividly after a record heat wave. Formerly green, healthy hydrangeas turned brown and crispy, and the blooms went brittle and tan in a matter of days. And here is the hard part. Those burnt leaves and browned blooms will not recover. They are done for the season. So here is the fix, and it is about protection. First, shade during the worst of it. If your hydrangea takes hard afternoon or west-facing sun, that is the problem. And in a heat wave, you can throw a shade cloth, a bed sheet, or fabric over a simple structure to keep the sun off the foliage during the hottest hours. Second, mulch. Lay 2 to 3 inches of bark mulch around the base to keep the soil cool and hold moisture in. But never use gravel or black plastic, because those actually raise the soil temperature and cook the roots. And third, when a heat wave is in the forecast, water the plant deeply beforehand so the root zone is fully charged before the heat hits. Dial it to your region. This bites hardest in the hot south, the mountain west, and dry inland areas, where a single 95-degree day with low humidity can drain the moisture from the top several inches of soil in a day and a half, even under mulch. And the honest note: the plant itself will very likely survive scorch, even when it looks alarming. Deep watering helps it pull through. But you prevent the whole thing with shade and mulch before the damage is done. Now, that word deeply, how you actually water this plant, is where mistake number 2 lives. Mistake number 2: watering your hydrangea the wrong way in the heat. And there are really 3 parts to this one. 3 habits that feel like caring and quietly work against the plant. Watering too shallow, watering at the wrong time of day, and watering in the wrong place. Let's take them in order. First, shallow and frequent. In the July heat, it feels responsible to go out every single day and give the plant a quick sprinkle, but a light daily splash only ever wets the top inch of soil. And here is what that does. It trains the roots to stay up near the surface, chasing that shallow water, right where the soil dries out fastest and the heat is worst. So you end up with a plant that is completely dependent on you and cannot handle a single missed day. Here is the fix. Deep and infrequent beats, shallow and frequent, every time. Hydrangeas want about 1 to 1.5 inches of water a week, and you want that water soaking down a full 6 inches into the soil. So 1 or 2 deep, thorough soaks a week, rather than a daily dribble. A deep soak pulls the roots down where the soil stays cool and moist, and that is what actually builds drought resilience. Second, the timing. Water in the morning, not the evening. Water that sits on the foliage all night invites fungal disease, and in humid July weather, that means powdery mildew. Morning watering lets any splashed leaves dry through the day. Third, and this ties both together, water at the base of the plant, not over the top. Overhead watering does 3 bad things at once. It wets the foliage and invites that mildew. It wastes most of the water on leaves instead of getting it down to the roots where it is needed. And it adds real weight to those big flower heads, which are heavy enough to flop already. So use a soaker hose or a watering wand and deliver the water right to the soil at the base. One note for the container growers. Pots dry out 2 to 3 times faster than garden soil, and those big blooms drink hard, so a potted hydrangea in July may genuinely need water every single day. For those, the finger test is your guide, not the calendar. And here is the tell that ties this back to mistake 1. Those crispy brown leaf edges are a sign of root zone dryness, not disease. Deep watering at the base is the answer to both. But watering deeply solves one problem and sets up the deadliest one on this whole list. Because now we have to talk about watering too much. And that is mistake number 3. Now, mistake number 3. This is the one in the title. This is the one that actually kills the plant. And here is what makes it so cruel. You do it while you are trying your hardest to save the plant. You commit this mistake out of pure love. Remember the scene from the very start. The hydrangea collapsing in the afternoon heat. You saw the wilt. You read it as a plant dying of thirst, and you soaked it. And then the next hot day, it wilted again, so you soaked it again. And slowly, without knowing it, you drowned it. Here is the biology. Hydrangeas love water, and that is exactly what makes this trap so easy to fall into. But roots do not just need water, they need air. There are tiny pockets of oxygen in healthy soil, and the roots breathe through them. When you keep that soil constantly wet and soggy, water fills every one of those air pockets, and the roots can no longer get any oxygen at all. They begin to suffocate. And in that drowning, airless, waterlogged soil, root rot moves in, a fungal disease that turns firm, healthy, white roots into brown, soft mush. And here is the part that fools absolutely everyone. A plant with rotting, suffocating roots cannot take up water anymore. So it wilts, and it yellows. It looks exactly like a plant that is thirsty, even though it is sitting in wet soil. So you look at the wilt, you assume it is dry, and you pour on more water. You are watering a plant that is already drowning. So here is where that test from the beginning becomes the most important thing in this entire video. Before you ever pick up the hose, you read the plant, and then you check the soil. First, the wilt. Wilted in the afternoon, but recovered by evening, means the plant is fine. It is just handling the heat. Do not water. Wilted still in the cool of the evening or the next morning means something is genuinely wrong. Second, and this settles it, the finger test. Push your finger 2 or 3 inches down into the soil at the base of the plant. If it is bone dry down there, then yes, water deeply. But if it is damp or wet or soggy, then stop. Whatever is wrong with your plant, more water is not the answer. If it is wilting in wet soil, you are very likely looking at root rot, and the last thing it needs is another drink. So here is the fix, both the prevention and the rescue. For prevention, water deeply, but only when that top couple of inches has actually dried out, using the finger test every single time instead of watering on a fixed schedule. And plant in soil that drains well, never in a low, boggy spot where water collects. And in heavy clay, plant high, in a raised bed or a mound, so the roots are never sitting in a puddle. For the rescue, if you suspect root rot, stop watering completely and let the soil dry out. Improve the drainage. For a potted hydrangea, you can slide it out, trim away any brown, mushy roots with clean scissors, and repot it into fresh, well-draining soil in a pot with drainage holes. And here is the honest truth that no product on a shelf will ever tell you. The only real cure for this is the discipline to check the soil before you water, every single time. Not a schedule, not a gadget. Your own finger, 2 inches down, before you reach for the hose. That one habit is what saves the plant. Let me ask you something, because this mistake gets so many good gardeners. Have you ever lost a hydrangea in the summer that you watered faithfully, watched it wilt and yellow and die no matter how much you gave it, and never understood why? Tell me in the comments. I would bet the story was root rot, and the plant was being loved to death. Quick one before the next mistake, because we are talking about root rot, and that is exactly where this comes in. If you ever catch a plant in the early stages of root rot, a properly diluted hydrogen peroxide soak is one real, limited tool for it. And a dilute rinse keeps your tools clean between plants. But that same bottle will do nothing for the sun scorch we talked about earlier. And knowing that difference, exactly where it helps and where it is useless, is the whole point of the hydrogen peroxide playbook. All 31 real garden uses, the exact dilution for each so you are never guessing, and the 5 things peroxide will not do, so you do not kill a plant trying. Sourced from real horticulture, not the usual internet myths, with a clip and pin chart for your shed wall. 25 pages, $27, link in the description. Now stay with me, because mistake number 4 has a hard July deadline. And if you get the timing wrong, you will not kill the plant, but you will erase every single flower it was going to give you next year. Mistake number 4. Pruning your hydrangea at the wrong time, in the wrong way. And this one comes with a hard deadline written into the July calendar. Get it wrong and you will not kill the plant. It will look perfectly healthy, but it will give you a wall of green leaves and not one single flower next summer, because you cut off next year's blooms without ever knowing it. Here is where the type from the beginning of the video becomes everything. Remember, some hydrangeas bloom on old wood and some on new wood, and they have opposite pruning rules. Let's start with the old wood types, the big leaf mopheads, the lace caps, and the oak leaf. For these, July is the single most important pruning moment of the entire year, and it is a narrow window. You prune them right after they finish their main flowering flush, and here is exactly how. Cut the spent flower heads back to the first pair of strong, healthy buds just below the dead bloom, and then stop. Do not cut any further down. Here is the biology and the reason for the deadline. Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, that plant is forming the flower buds for next year on this year's wood. So if you cut deep into the plant now, or if you prune it later, after about the 1st of August, you are slicing off next year's flowers before they even form. Clemson is direct about it. Avoid pruning after August 1st. Miss that window, and you have traded next June's blooms for nothing. Now, the new wood types, the cone-flowered panicles, and the smooth types like Annabelle. These are the opposite, and the rule for July is even simpler. Do not prune them in summer at all. They bloom on growth they put out in spring, so they get pruned in late winter or very early spring, never now. Cutting them in July just removes the very stems that are about to bloom. There is one happy exception to all of this, the reblooming types, like the Endless Summer series. For those, deadheading the spent blooms now, snipping off the faded flowers, actually encourages a second flush later in the summer. So, on rebloomers, deadhead away. And here is the honest safety rule, if you take nothing else from this. If you are not sure what type you have, do not prune. Just deadhead the spent flowers and remove any obviously dead wood. That is always safe, on every type. You will never accidentally cut off next year's flowers by simply removing this year's dead ones. When in doubt, only deadhead. Now, the last mistake is one more thing people do in the heat that backfires. And it is about feeding. Mistake number 5, fertilizing your hydrangea in the heat of July. Your plant looks stressed and scorched, so your instinct is to feed it, to give it a boost, to help it recover. And in high heat, that feeding does real damage. Here is the biology. Fertilizer is made of mineral salts. When you apply it to a plant that is already heat-stressed and struggling to pull up enough water, those concentrated salts build up in the soil around the roots and actually pull moisture back out of them. It is called salt burn, and on a hydrangea in July, it shows up as browned, scorched leaf edges, the very thing you were trying to fix. Worse, the sources are direct that over-fertilizing in high heat causes bud abortion. The plant, stressed by the salts, drops the flower buds it was building. So you feed it hoping for more blooms, and you get fewer. And all that soft, forced new growth is more vulnerable to the pests and the mildew that thrive in the summer heat. So here is the fix, and it is simple restraint. Do not fertilize a hydrangea during a heat wave, and stop feeding for the season by around mid-July in most areas. If a hydrangea needs feeding at all, the time is spring, as new growth begins, with a gentle, slow-release fertilizer, not a summer rescue dose. And here is the honest truth. An established hydrangea in decent soil barely needs feeding at all. A simple layer of compost around the base in spring is often everything it wants. In the heat of July, the single best thing you can do for a stressed plant is not to feed it. It is to water it correctly and shade it. That is it. So a stressed hydrangea in July does not need more from you. It needs less. And that turns out to be the theme of this whole video. Let me pull it all together. Before we finish, do one thing for me. Think of one person you know whose hydrangea collapses every summer, who is out there watering it faithfully and watching it struggle anyway. Send them this video, just the link. It might be the thing that finally gets them through July. Now let me pull all 5 together, because they are not really 5 separate rules. They are 3 disciplines, and every one of them comes down to a single surprising idea. In July, your hydrangea mostly needs you to stop helping so hard. The first discipline is water wisdom, and it is the big one. That is, mistakes 2 and 3. Read the wilt before you react. Water deeply, at the base, in the morning, but only when the soil is actually dry. And never, ever confuse afternoon heat wilt with thirst, because that confusion is what kills the plant. The second discipline is shielding from the sun and heat. That is mistake 1. Give it afternoon shade in a heat wave, mulch the roots to keep them cool, and soak it deeply before the heat arrives. The third discipline is restraint. That is mistakes 4 and 5. Leave the shears alone, unless you know your type and your window, and put the fertilizer away until spring. In the heat, the kindest thing you can do is less. Read the wilt, shade the roots, and hold back. Do those 3, and your hydrangea walks out of July alive and blooming. And listen, if you are in your 50s, 60s, or beyond, you know a hydrangea is rarely just a shrub. It is the big blue mop head by the porch, the cutting from your mother's garden, still going strong. You have earned a plant that thrives through the summer, not one you love to death in a heat wave with too much water and too much worry. So subscribe and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library. Real horticulture, exact amounts, and we tell you straight when something is just a myth. Next time, another plant, another set of summer mistakes. What actually works, and what people swear by that simply does not. Now go out to your hydrangea, and before you water it, check the soil. I will see you in the next one.